directors, the people that helm the movies that we love or even hate. Some directors, like Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, and George Lucas, have pushed to change the way that we look at movies, but some have shown us what it takes to truly be the worst. Hey guys, Rich Mixed here, back at it again with another video today here on this lovely Wednesday. And today here on the channel we are talking about who I consider to be the worst working director in Hollywood, or I should say the most unoriginal director working in Hollywood today, J.J. Abrams. Now, as to why I think of this, you'll just have to watch the video. But before we get into the main topic of today, real quick, just gotta say, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for future content to be injected into your YouTube feed every Wednesday. I talk about all kinds of stuff from Amphibia to Spider-Man. If any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, hit the subscribe button and turn notifications so you can be notified when a new video comes out. Without further ado, let's get into this. So let me make something clear real quick. I am strictly talking about the movies that he has directed. He has produced many films that have received a lot of praise from their fans. No Lost, no Cloverfield, none of that. I will say this, I don't hate all of his movies. And the first one we're going to be talking about today, and we're going to be talking about 5 of them, is one that I just happen to like, Super 8. Say what you will, and maybe it's just me being a bit nostalgic. This movie is a huge love letter to Spielberg and, well, the 80s as a whole. Now, I was about 10 or 11 when this movie came out, and I really loved it. And admittedly, it's been a hot minute since I last watched it, but this movie had heart, and you could see that on the screen. But it was also a precursor in a lot of ways to what has gone to define the rest of his career since then. And if anything, this movie worked to show us that Abrams had a huge love for sci-fi. But then he would make his worst mistake yet. He would completely miss the point of a franchise and try to make it like Star Wars. Of course, I'm talking about Star Trek. Star Trek in a lot of ways is different from Star Wars. Yes, they both can be called sci-fi, but if we're being honest, the original trilogy has more in common with fantasy, but I'm not getting into that today in this video. Now, while Star Wars had a lot more action and drama, Star Trek was more about learning and exploring. And somehow, Abrams managed to miss this. Not only was the story weak as far as story goes, but it also lacked the intelligence that the series typically has. And I think there was an interview where Abrams said that his Star Trek movies was him prototyping the Star Wars movies that he would eventually go on to make. And if that's true, it explains a lot. Now, I'm not saying that Star Trek didn't have any action. It had its fair share of it, but these movies lacked the most important part of their DNA. But the movie that lacked the most understanding, well, that one comes next. Now, this movie was the worst offender of his Star Trek movies. Just like the next movie he would make, it was a total ripoff of something else. But everyone knows that at this point. Star Trek Into Darkness was never going to be great. It's cool having Khan as the big bad, but without all the buildup and the nuance, it's just not great. He took Wrath of Khan and he either took stuff out of it or he just reused it in the most obvious ways. Or in some cases even inverted some things, changing certain details about how certain things played out. Oh, it's not Spock sacrificing his life to realign the reactor core or whatever. It's now Kirk that does it. Ooh. Shut the hell up. It's stupid. Just stupid. Just make an original movie, please. This movie was an absolute train wreck. It would take a great filmmaker to make this movie good, and an even better crew to make it great. And the sad truth, that this was only just the beginning, and it's because that this was his plans for The Force Awakens. It really seems at this point Abrams can't get worse, and people really didn't know how bad it was for George Lucas to sell Star Wars to Disney. Now I understand why he sold Star Wars, but Disney was probably his worst option. It was the worst option he could have taken. There are far better studios out there that wouldn't have treated Star Wars the way Disney has. Then again, I could be completely wrong, and The Force Awakens would have happened one way or another. Now, I'm not going to discuss Kathleen Kennedy, as that's a whole other basket of spiders that I just don't want to get into in this video right here. I'll be discussing that at a later time, and plus, it's been talked to death, so all I'm going to say right now is Kathleen Kennedy has been absolutely terrible for Lucasfilms as a whole. But in this one, J.J. Abrams remade A New Hope. But you guessed it, worse. It's like he didn't have any respect for the prequels and George Lucas for making the prequels. And yeah, he didn't have any respect. There's an interview clip that absolutely illustrates this point, and it's just disgusting. If you're gonna have someone making a Star Wars movie, they need to have respect for not just part of it, but the entirety of it. So they can take all that in and use all that information. He was like a kid at the playground with his action figures, playing out his own adventures. And yes, I know I'm not the first person to make that point, but it's a really great point to illustrate what I mean. And somehow he forgot what made Luke so relatable. He somehow ruined Finn as a character as well, who had so much potential and could have been so much more than he was. He missed any of the nuances that were in the original trilogy. It just was like action, 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 shoot, 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 bam, 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 cool nostalgic moments. Look, it's the Millennium Falcon. Ah, excitement. This movie was a rejection of the prequels, and it's bad for it. But we have one more dumpster fire to talk about in this video today. This movie is hated almost unanimously across the entirety of the internet. Like, this movie managed to unite the internet pretty much when it came out. Like, that doesn't happen very often. This movie is considered to be the worst of the Star Wars movies. Okay, well, maybe that's just me, but still, it's bad. It's really bad. After the storm that was The Last Jedi, Abrams went full-on rejection and fan service mode. Not just was the dialogue bad, but he also chose to retcon characters or character arcs. Not just was the dialogue bad, but also his use of characters this time around. Instead of embracing the movies that he didn't care for, he just outright rejected them, which is absolutely childish. And the fan service, oh, the fan service was just unbearable. It was the worst across all the movies that he had done yet. Forget having a good story or even an interesting story or even having great characters. Forget any of that. Who cares? We have fan service here. Just shove in as many references as you can and it'll be great, right? No. That doesn't make a great movie, Abrams. It's like he already used up all his original ideas and now is just playing with the sandbox to put in what he wants and retcon what he hates. Yeah, cause his movies make a lot of money, he keeps getting work. Sorry about that, but honestly, it really can feel like that. And over the course of all the movies that he has been the director of, this criticism holds true. From fan service to lack of originality, and honestly, he really doesn't care. He likes stories that don't make any sense when you start to think about it, and he also knows that he loves fan service, but he also knows what he hates. And honestly, he really doesn't care what we have to say. But this is why J.J. Abrams is the most unoriginal director working today. Well, we're finally to the end of the video. It's been a very interesting one, to say the least. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I do intend to be analyzing other directors from great to bad in the future. My next video on the subject will be talking about James Cameron. I don't know when I'm going to make that video, but at some point I'm going to make that. That is something I am intending to do in the future. But with all that said, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I've been working on scripting my videos, and so far it seems to be doing pretty well. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let me know down below in the comments what you think. What's your opinion of J.J. Abrams and his movies? Do you like any of his movies? Do you not like any of his movies? Do you want me to talk about Cloverfield? And do you want me to talk about Lost? Comment down below, let me know. And until next time, Rich Mixed out.